Welcome in, everyone. RFK Refugees Podcast. Ted here. John is not here. John is currently, we'll say, on a flight to Miami, trying to convince Miami to retrade Julian Gressel back to back to DC United. That's what we'll say is happening right now. Apparently, he's hanging out in Miami. Miami doesn't want him anymore. So why just come back to DC, buddy? Round two. We got Brian here, producer Brian, normally in the background, live here on the show, making his one substitute appearance. He makes one more, and he gets a special clause in his contract where he gets a bonus. We double his pay. Free podcasting, lots of money in that. How you doing?
Doing, Ted?
Good,
I'm doing
man.
Well,
good. You have a good weekend?
It was okay. My soccer wise, not the best, but otherwise pretty good. We got 8 inches of snow down here.
Oof.
Took the girls sledding. Got worn out, so made up a little bit for the performances on the field.
Well, that's okay. I think performances for the team we're about to talk about. There was some. I think there's good and bad. And we'll have it all. I enjoyed my last weekend of freedom before toiling on the soccer fields every Saturday and Sunday for until the 22nd, when I've decided to make myself a break and go to the Kickers home opener. So that's what I've decided. But had a lot of fun. Went to see a Kickers preseason game. Hung out with a lot of the Red Army afterwards after the game. So that was fun. Watched of course soccer with some friends over at a Buffalo Wild Wings friend, which you can get them to watch. They will show MLS. They have the DirecTV package. You just gotta kind of force them to find it. But I had a good time watching with friends. That was the real fun of it. Man, let's talk. We'll get into it. We'll talk DC United. Before we get into that, I think we got some news, some player news. Kind of surprising player news before we get into talk about the game. DC United is apparently acquiring a winger on loan, Fidel Barajas, on loan from Chivas USA. He is a Mexican American born in Sacramento. Has both dual citizenship for Mexico and for the United States. And as such, plays on the Mexican youth teams. He's played on some of the U.S. youth teams. He's kind of bounced, one of those players that kind of bounces back and forth. His most notable sort of appearance was, I believe, 2025. Yeah, so it was like a 16, 17-year-old playing for Charleston in the USL Championship, registering in 2023 4 goals and 9 assists as a 16-year-old. He's a Princeton RSL Academy product. I think part of their program down there. So played well and was sold $4 million to Chivas de Guadalajara. And now it looks like he's gotten some fair pins. I think I saw 87 minutes of 5 matches. So some kind of spot starts in Liga MX. But DC United will get a loan. I believe Tom Bogart is the one sort of dropping the story. Golf's been a little quiet on it. It's been interesting. Mm-hmm. Usually he kind of follows up with confirming the reports that yes, Fidel Barajas will be coming. But Tom Bogart reporting the loan will be through the summer, and then they have the option to extend it. There's no purchase option. So it seems to me like this is we need right wing depth. We have Jared Stroud. We need more sort of depth behind the attack. We've got players out, players kind of cycling through to injury. Here's a player that's basically free. It's a loan. So, contract wise, probably not a lot. And if he blows it up, does great, and he ends up being worth 6-7 million, which maybe Chivas sell him for that, then you slot him right in sort of a U22 slot. So, that's the ultimate high. But I fully project. My projection right now is he's here through the summer. If the team is looking to maybe make some big moves in the summer, and he's not getting appearances, he probably goes back to Chivas. If he's playing well, maybe they extend that through the winter and then they kind of talk. But I don't know. What do you make of this move, if anything? And I know you're a huge Charleston Battery fan, so you watched all of his appearances in 2023. So
I agree. I think it seems like it's probably depth that we need, playing time that a young player needs that they might not get where they're at. Mm-hmm. So you know, I I've gotten burned too many times on like young South and Central American wingers that do or do not live up to their potential. We may have some questions about that coming up. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly a depth play. We need help in attack. um, and if it's a low cost option for the team, obviously, I think with the outs and the lack of ends, we've got a little bit of. I'm sure we've got some cap room. I'm sure we have roster depth room. So one more on the bench doesn't hurt us.
Yeah. I mean, I think looking at sort of how this team entered, Jacob Murrell playing in that sort of right wing role, despite this team having been better in depth, this team was still in need, I think, of
Hmm.
depth. John's prediction about having 2 goalkeepers on the roster, they had it for the opening week. It was not as dire. And there are some players, Rita Zohir, I think his visa is still kind of in the works. Um, and with and sort of, I think making this move means they might have 2 goalkeepers on the bench, but they're going to be stuck with a full complement of subs at the very least, or at least more than 4, I will say.
Hmm.
Like, there's not going to be a situation this year where I think you're going to have like it just be dire straits throughout the year. So an interesting prospect. He played really well in the USL Championship as a 16-year-old.
Hmm.
That's not something to like sneeze at. He's playing against, grown men, and playing in second division soccer, which, is not the elite of the elite, but it's certainly, Charleston Battery are a good team. Championship has some good players. It's not nothing. It's why he earned sort of that contract. So I think it'll be an interesting one to watch. I think it'll be, if he gets out there and performs well, how does that come down to during the summer? He might come in and he might absolutely light it up. He might be okay. It's just kind of, we'll see what happens, and we'll see how many minutes he gets.
Yep.
All right, let's get into the main event. I think the thing that everybody wants to talk to us, DC United opening game. We forgot to mention too, by the way, sorry. Going to back it up a little bit. DC United also traded $250,000 in GAM for an international slot. So they had already traded away 180,000, I think, got 180,000 for a international slot, and then had to then go buy $250,000 to get an international slot. 70,000. Go ahead.
Is that for Zahir?
I don't think it's for Zohir. I think it's for Luke. It's for Lucas McNaughton. And they were presuming he was going to have a green card by now.
Gotcha.
And he is still in the process of getting that. I think it's close. We can speculate, but yeah, just go turn on CNN and just kind of read some things on CNN and MSNBC and the other of the like, and you'll kind of see maybe why green cards are being a little bit held up. I'll say that much. So it's a shame. It's not a big law. I mean, 70,000 is, not insignificant, but it's not something to really like get upset about. I think they got caught in a tight spot. I think they tried to see if they could get some roster space. I think they were planning on going out and getting that international slot in the summer, to go out and get like a big time player. Conceivably, they have till the summer for Lucas McNaughton to get that green card slot. Sounds like they're pretty confident that's going to happen. Once he gets that green card, that frees up that slot, so then he can basically be acquired. They can go out and get an international player. So all in all, not a terrible thing, but certainly a nice and interesting little nugget to start the year as they entered the registration deadline.
Gotcha.
Let's get into that game. For open game of the season, DC United, Toronto FC, two of the teams. This was not a game that I think many people were watching. Even Matt Doyle was out here farming out a Substack report, and one of the guys who works for District Press, and I will grab his name here in a little bit, but wrote a really great article. I'm going to credit him where I did, because he had a lot of really interesting analysis when it comes to DC. But this was not a game a lot of people were watching. These are two teams that many have projected kind of the bottom half, either alternating between Wooden Spoon, between, no team had DC in the playoffs, no team, even fewer people had Toronto in the playoffs. This is a team that is a mess, a absolute mess when it comes to we at least got something for having to hold a DP slot. They're stuck holding a DP slot after the January window closes because their star literally doesn't want to play for them, but also doesn't want to go to any of the options. So he was left in Toronto. Of course, we're talking about Insigne. So they were stuck. So this is a team that is trying to rebuild, trying to do something different, and kind of just stuck with the roster that they have. They made some moves, not too many. So on the surface, this is a game you run into and you're like, this should be a win. Did not happen.
Yes.
2-2 draw. Result disappointing, I think. We'll see if we get to a certain point and maybe this looks a little bit better. Maybe Toronto makes a surprise run. Who knows? But right now, I think disappointment is the key word.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think when I looked at the rankings, power rankings, sort of preseason rankings, I think everybody that I saw had Toronto at the bottom, and we weren't far from it. But you would have hoped that this being home opener against a weak team, this would have been a really good way to get a win. It certainly would have been a lot worse had we got a loss. I think maybe on the whole it was a fair result for how we played. So I guess Ted, kind of kick us off. Our first real lineup that we get to see of the season. What did you think about Troy Lesesne's team that he put out?
Well, let's get to that lineup. Obviously, Kim Jung-hong in goal. And then you had your two center backs, Kai Rolls, Lucas Bartlett. Left side on the left side, you had David Schnegg, Aaron Herrera. I think a lot of this season is defensively. Can they be better? And can they be better defensively? And can they prevent some goals? I think they were unsuccessful, but there were some wrinkles where I was like, okay, well, maybe this is a trending on being better. They're going to be a pressing team. They're going to get caught on the counter. The question is, can they actually cut back, and can they, go in and be sort of organized defensively and make some of those blocks, prevent it from getting too easy. And I think sometimes they were successful and other times they were less successful. But that lots resting on that. Your two holding midfielders, Brendan Sarvania, Borris Enow, we'll get to him in a minute. A nice little surprise and maybe a good thing to see. And then you had Muriel out on the right. You had Pirani, obviously, as your number 10. We'll get to him in a minute. And then Jose Kojima and Benteke up top. So I think expected lineup, Peglo probably being the one player from last week who did not play this week. He apparently picked up a little injury. We'll see how he looks for Chicago. Sounds like they're being kind of cautious with that. Overall, I think it was kind of as expected from Nashville. I thought Muriel sort of being on the right was interesting. I think it works. He's not. The expectation, I think, maybe is he's not going to play as like a winger. He's going to cut inside. He's going to play narrow. You're going to see this team sort of play a 4-2-3-1, sort of lining up, but it's going to look very different. And I think we saw some of that in this game. Mark Machado has sort of a great breakdown, and if you watch it, really they kind of shifted to where it was Bartlett, Rawls, and Herrera kind of in that back line for that first half. Sarvina, Enow kind of having a lot of free reign to kind of be that destroyer. And then Kojima out left, and really David Schnegg kind of pushed up high. And I think that was a targeted effort to kind of like overload. They wanted to overload that left side. And I think that's kind of what they wanted to do. What did you make of this lineup? Any takeaways, I guess, when the game kicked off?
Nothing different than you had. Yeah, I do think one of the things that I was obvious was that intent to overload on the wing and to sort of for lack of a better term, I think you have a lot of inverted fullbacks, and so you had Bartlett sort of playing the center and Rolls pushed up. I think we'll get to how that played out in the end later. That was obviously a strategy for the team. So I thought that was interesting. And yeah, I think the attempt to continue to play our number 10, who's not a number 10, as a number 10, with Pirani continues to be. There's obviously something that is being seen there, and it continues to not really translate into game day. So, yeah, I'd say I was a little surprised to see Pirani come out in the middle. Maybe more from a person standpoint than from a personnel standpoint, because I think from a personnel standpoint it makes sense.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a little bit. I wanna talk the good. And to me,
Yes.
Benteke gets the goal. I think he's gonna do that. So my expectations for him, I don't want to put the highlight on him because I feel like unless he scores a hat trick, it's like he goes out, he's gonna get an opportunity. He's going to get the opportunity that he got. He's going to put a head of ball in the back of net. First player to shout out, also got team of the match day. It was Borris Enow. This is a player that John has been tough on, doesn't think he's very good. I was taking the Goss theorem approach. I was like, let's see what happens next year. He gets a full off season. He's adjusted. He's been living here for a while. Sometimes, that can be good. I thought this was like the first game where you were like, oh, this is what they see in him. Like, this dude runs. He will bomb forward. The goal he scores comes from him. They sort of lose the ball in the middle of the field, and then he fights to sort of win back that possession and sort of create that sort of quick turnaround. The goal was hilarious in a number of ways, because you could see him sort of driving towards the goal, and then Pirani fans out wide as to be like, "Hey, give me the ball. I'm the number 10. I'll score the goal." And he's like, and literally the defenders just part the sea, and he just runs right through it and slots a very nice goal and a very nice finish to go up 1-0. So, little bit, I will say he had one moment where it could have gone very differently for him. I think he kind of sort of runs into the back of a Toronto player and causes a little bit of a OGs type moment when they went to VAR. There was very minimal contact. I think, the Toronto player was kind of sort of going down. I think it was kind of one of those calls. It's like, I'm not going to make that this early in the game, and there really wasn't a whole lot of contact. So fortunate in that regard, because that could have been that could have gone very differently for him. But the rest of the game, he was excellent. He was one of the best players out there on the field, and just really his ability to cover space and sort of be sort of everywhere, be an outlet for a player, I think is going to be something interesting to watch. And if this team wants to hum, other than getting the ball to Christian Benteke, they're going to need a player like him to play well. So I'm excited to see him maybe paired up a little bit with Matty Peltola. I think that's still, despite Sarvinia, he was fine. He was okay. He didn't do anything that really stood out. I think he put in he sort of held the center of the pitch and dropped back when he needed to. Very much played like a number 6 type role, with Enow kind of going and being that sort of, more pressing midfielder. But I really am curious to get a guy like Peltola in, who's still very talented, and if they can develop a chemistry, you have something in that middle that maybe you can start to really control that side of the field and push players out wide, where you're going to have, 2 runners in Herrera and Schnegg that can defend. So
I think if anything, this game showed why maybe DC felt comfortable letting Mateusz Klich go, and if they feel like they can get this sort of performance out of Enow, it makes I think it kind of supports that decision. If you can get somebody, who's eight years his junior, to come in and play similarly, I think that's good moves. So,
I mean, Betzel is a guy that's playing. He's starting for the Finnish national team. That's not a world beater in any sense in Europe, but it's still like they trust him to play on their national team at his age, when rather than typically national teams are an old man's game. They're going to have much older players, much more experienced type players. So I expect, I think it's a little unfortunate he's coming off that injury in November. He was on the bench, I believe, so didn't get an appearance. The team was kind of chasing the game a little bit, so I don't think you didn't really wanted to push more players forward to try to get the win. So I'll be curious to see, if they get a lead up, maybe he makes an appearance, or maybe he's ready for a start. Other highlight, I think, was for me was Lucas Bartlett. He no one. I feel like nobody is talking about the pass he makes to Jacob Murrell on that play. Like, literally just picks up his head and just plays like a quarterback stepping back and dropping like a 50-yard dive to like his receiver, and just drops this beautiful like direct ball over the top. Finds Murrell. Murrell, by the way, man, I did not know that dude could cross. That dude can cross.
Yeah. that was beautiful.
Just like perfect. Like it literally was like right, like all Christian had to do. He didn't even have to challenge for that very much. Like he just had to maybe jump like 2 or 3 feet right at his head, hit with pace, kind of hangs, kind of one of those balls that just kind of hangs up. And all he has to do is just put his head through it, and he's going to direct it into the back of the net. But that ball from Bartlett, he had a couple too. I had another one too during that game, I think, where he like picked out a player and kind of got an attack going. That's like one of those, I think we've all kind of just seen like Bartlett as kind of this well-rounded defender. That type of long distribution might be something to watch out. If this team is like going to collect the ball and look to start an attack, you want to see that a little bit from Kim as well. I think that's been sort of called out. But that's something you're going to want to look for to sort of play that counter. You win the ball in your defensive end, you want to get the ball forward quickly to some of those runners. So I thought that was like an excellent play, excellent goal, well scored.
Yeah, agreed. And you brought up the long balls. I think another thing I took away is Kim. I think one showed his ability to step up and stop a shot, but the boy has got a foot on him too, and so he can hoof it down the field towards Benteke. I think that's got some promise throughout the season.
Yeah, let's talk Kim. I think he maybe comes away as kind of the player. Maybe you saw some good things and you saw some not so good things. Obviously, I think the goal is not a moment of glory. The goal he gives up, the first goal, not a moment of glory for him. Kind of a breakdown on the left side, a nice pass, I think, to open that up. The team gets beat a little bit on that left side. The cross comes in. I look at that guy, Kim, and I say, you got to have that. Like, you got to be ready for that cross. You got to be out to meet it. That ball should be in your hands. It's hit low. It's hit with pace, but it's really not a ball that should be threatened. Instead, he kind of is late to get it. He kind of reaches out, trying to just put a palm to it. Ends up, unfortunately, punching it into Herrera. I think some people are kind of looking at Herrera for that. I look more at Kim. I think Herrera is expects Kim to sort of get that ball. Like, he sees him go down. He's like, okay, he's got it. And then he doesn't. And then he kind of tries to like readdress and like just flick it out. He's kind of surprised by it. Ends up falling right to Jonathan Osorio. Kim's out of position. It's an easy finish, an easy goal. It's an unfortunate giveaway. What I will say is I'm not too... my biggest thing was for Kim was like, how is he going to respond? Okay, like, you've just had this moment, first game. I think there were some jitters. He had another moment too where like he made the save, but like it was a ball you probably should have controlled. Instead, it kind of goes through his arms and very fortunately deflects wide. So there were a couple of moments like that, and then I was like, okay, how is he going to respond? How is he going to, pick himself back up? I thought he responded well. I thought he, came out, made some really nice, got the ball in the cross, showed an ability that didn't hurt his confidence to say, I can go up and grab a ball. Makes a fantastic save in the second half.
Yeah.
And I think another really good save as well off a header. So I think we got to kind of look at this guy. This is like, old heads. It's weird to say old heads, but old heads remember Bill Hamid. Like, you have a goalkeeper who's 2021, who's talented, who's very like Kim. Kim was great saying like Kim is talented. Like he's a good goalkeeper. We're just going to have to put up with a little bit, especially, yes, he's learning the language quickly, but some of those moments are going to take some time to develop, and we got to maybe be okay with certain moments that are not so great. And I would much rather be having those moments from a kid who is 21, 22, who I know is going to get better, or I think is going to get better, versus a 28, 29-year-old who is about as good as he's going to be.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Kim has that we haven't had in a long time is you see the, I don't know if it's ability or instinct, but there's something there that, yes, with youth and inexperience, you'll lack the consistency on. But you saw a couple of moments where you're like, man, this guy can make some good saves. That we've been lacking with the three goalkeepers we let go at the end of last season. So
yeah. Oh, interesting. I got a question here from Jeremy. Says, I'd say Herrera is part of the same problem from last year. We go on for 30 minutes and we don't know how to finish games. I don't. I think it's too early. I think making broad statements about this team right now, I think it's a little bit too early. I think the goals they gave up a goal on a PK, which was, I think we'll talk about, a pretty soft PK. I think the goal came from like a mistake. I think this is one of those things where if we have situations where we get to a where it becomes a repeating problem, then it becomes a trend. First game of the year, I'm willing to, this game was not perfect. There were sloppy passes, sloppy plays, players not playing up to speed. It was kind of a big old mixed bag. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Do you have something you wanted to say? Sorry, I didn't want.
No. I do think Herrera was certainly not the best Aaron Herrera that we've seen on the field. I think that's really all I've got to say about that.
Yeah, but we know he can be better. We know he can be elite. I think there were still some good things he had. There were a couple times teams developing a counter, he makes just like, he has an ability, he reads that pass and just intercepts, and then he just immediately pushes it forward for an attack. I saw that a couple times. So he's a player we know can be better. And I'm not really I'm not putting too much on that goal. I think the primary recipient of that mistake was Kim. And I think this is a team that's trying a new shape. Go read Mark Machado's Substack. If you go find Matt Doyle's piece, he wrote a really good piece kind of about how, I think this is a case where we may have to be okay with a little sloppiness too, because I think this is Troy Lesesne trying to instill a different structure. He probably could have said, you know what, we're just going to bomb this to Benteke. We're going to find Benteke. We're gonna be Ted Lasso coaching team in the room where they just circle Zava and they're just like, find Zava. We're just gonna find Zava. That's all we're gonna do in this game. And they could do that. And I think they're trying to actually have some build out, develop some structure, come up with some different ways to kind of score goals this year. And I think that's a positive thing to see. We'll see if it works.
I'll say two more things before we get into questions. So one, another thing that I forgot to mention was the shape and the team's ability to keep the shape and to kind of revert back to that structure was really evident in a way that this team hasn't been in the past.
Mhm.
You could tell that it's something that they're working on so that they have that foundation to build on, as opposed to, even last year, I think it was relying on a little bit of shape of the back and then individual talent everywhere on the pitch. And I think that just the nature of this roster construction, even with just a couple pieces, it's a lot younger roster than it has been in the past. Having that structure and the foundation of that structure um, will be really good. And so,
Mhm.
so that was something certainly shown in the field.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing I wanted to get into, you mentioned the penalty as our resident referee expert. What are your thoughts on that penalty?
It's soft. I think it's one of those things. It's called on the field, and I think once you call it on the field, it becomes hard to overturn that via VAR. And I think we saw that a lot. We saw that a lot in this game, where and as a structure and as a part of soccer, I like that MLS. I think one thing they've gotten right is they do not intrude on the referee's decision on the field as much as you see in like the Premier League or as you see
Mm-hmm.
in other leagues. They will if the call is on the field, they take a purely like it's almost like a law-based approach where it's like it has to be like very much like clearly wrong. I'll get into a minute. I'm not as upset about the penalty, but I am upset about one moment in the game. We have a question related to it. So I'll get to it in a minute. Um, and someone actually has a question here. How can someone fix soccer? A PK was far too harsh for a game-changing punishment for a light foul in the corner of the box. Likewise, a PK feels harsh, and a play advantage feels too soft for that takedown on Benteke. So we're going to get into it. I agree with you 100%. I am an advocate about a year. Like PKs need to go away. We are like one of the few sports where it's like a foul can be at one place in the field and then be an inch in another place, and it turns from a like 0.00003 expected goals opportunity into a 0.9 expected goals opportunity, because that's what you do with a PK. I don't think it's changing anytime soon, at least, because more goals equals more entertainment, and people want to see more goals. Regardless if PKs are boring, it's going to be here forever. But yes, I think a PK should only be called if it's denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity. Otherwise, just take it to the edge of the box. It's a free kick, just like every other free kick. Even if it happens like right inside the box, you just bring it back out. They get a shot, and you create a more fair environment than what you get here. Sarvinia jumps up. I think he doesn't need to do that in one sense. Like, I don't think he needs to make that type of play. It's soft. He maybe gets a little bit of a touch of the ball, and then the player, it's called on the field. It's going to be that. The part, and then obviously some people also, I think RGN asked about the what was Benteke was on. There was a sequence of events that I'm actually more upset about, which is there's a situation. First of all, I kind of watched the full game again. Long, the defender Long for Toronto picks up a yellow card early in the game. I don't recall that foul or what exactly happened there. But then in the second half, I don't want to say stops a promising attack, but prevents Benteke from getting the ball and launching a counter, puts his hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Referee goes over to him and says, "That's enough. Like, you're done here." And then about a few minutes later, he hacks down Benteke. Is it Dogzo? Is it not Dogzo? It's borderline. Like, it is very, very close. Yes, there is a defender kind of in this vicinity. I have seen referees say that basically if you draw a line, if you do a flat image, of the sideline, and you have a defender that is in the last man, you are stopped. You have done a Dogzo, and it's a red card. They go to VAR on that call. My biggest problem is that that's clearly a foul. You could see it in real time. The referee lets play continue to go to Pirani. Pirani calls advantage. You are allowed as a referee to then come back and say, that's a yellow and that's a red, you're gone.
Yeah.
That is what should have happened in my mind. If you're going to play the advantage and you're going to say that is not Dogzo, that's a yellow. That is a yellow. He had already committed a foul. You had given him a warning and said no more. He makes a hack challenge on Benteke. Yes, they get the advantage. They don't do anything with it. Pirani had a poor game. We'll get into that. I think we got a question.
It's the definition of a professional foul to prevent an attack. It is in every league, in every game, that should have at least been a yellow card, even if the dogs was turned on. So here's a question. I don't know. Can you? I guess at that point, VAR can't recommend a yellow at that point, right?
No. Apparently they can recommend. I don't want to get too much into that, but then it also appeared on that play. DC, a corner was awarded, and then they went to VAR, and then they turned it into a goal kick. Now, I don't know if maybe he thought it was a corner. He points to it. They have the VR discussion. The AR's on the other side says, "Hey, that's a goal kick. That's not a corner." We don't know. We don't have issue on the audio whether VAR overturned that. I think that whole sequence. I thought the referee was fine for the most part. The PK is whatever. Cervinia should not have his leg up like that. But Douglas Racerone, hello. So rewatch that play and can live without Dogzo, but not being a card after was wild. And you're allowed to do that. That happened in a playoff game for DC against the Red Bulls all the way back in 2012. Rafael Marquez commits a yellow card offense. DC gets an advantage. DC goes down the field. It doesn't turn into that advantage. Referee comes back over and issues a yellow card for Marquez and gets him sent off. You can absolutely do that. So anyway, it's going to happen in soccer. DC, I think, still had some opportunities that could have won this game. It kind of you're going to get those breaks. You got to kind of fight through it. Violet over on Blue Sky says, "Is it too early to give up on Pirani as a starter?" Let's get into Gabriel Pirani. I have some thoughts on it. What were your thoughts overall on his performance? We're all going to say it's bad.
Yeah. It's I kind of open the start as there is something that someone is seeing with Gabriel Pirani that is not being seen on the 90 minutes on the pitch. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what hidden training room footage there is. But we are not getting MLS starter quality out of Gabriel Pirani. We are not getting the couple of things that got us excited where we saw him playing for the Brazilian youth national team, sprinting through the lines. It's just not coming together for whatever reason. It feels to a much lesser extent very Edison Flores-y in what we hope to get, and what we have been sold on is not the product that we're seeing. So I don't know if it's too early to give up on Pirani as a starter. I don't know that this show has ever really backed him as a starter, so it's one thing to give up on him. But he certainly shouldn't feel as though he's got a comfortable starting position.
Yeah. I think Doug hits the nail on the head. He's playing, he's in the number 10 spot, but he's not playing as a number 10. He's playing as a second striker. And we, for all those, for all our complaints, one thing he has evolved in his game, and why I think he's still on this roster, is he had developed an ability to make a run and put himself in a good spot. Like, he can see those types of second runs, but as soon as the ball gets on his feet, he has no ability to pick out a good pass to make something happen if you want to be an elite number 10 in this league. I think he would be fine to okay on as like a second forward, a false nine in someone else's system. Right now, he's not a number 10. Randall Leal came into the game. My conspiracy theory on this is that this is Mackay trying to convince ownership to get him to let him go out and spend some real money this summer on a number 10. That's why I made one of my specific predictions is that we will sign a number 10 in the summer window. So yeah, I mean, that has still kind of been a part of his game. I think we'll see him get a good run out. I think we'll still see him get minutes. Maybe Liao comes in as a starter. I think maybe that remains to be seen. Maybe he has to kind of come back and earn a spot. I think you'll see my projection is a good 2 to 3 games. And if it's really not getting any better, then it's kind of like, okay, curtains. We're gonna roll out Randall Leal at that middle spot. And Mark Machado points out, like, once he came onto the field, it was like he was much better in possession, able to sort of control that game. So
I mean, you talk about distribution. Here's the stats. In 71 minutes, Gabriel Pirani had 13 passes, 10 of which were accurate. In the last 20 minutes of the game, Randall Leal had 24 passes, 21 of which were accurate. So a higher percentage, but just being the point of distribution, which is what you need your number 10 to be, and what Gabriel Pirani continuously is not. And I think you kind of hit it. If he's playing that false nine, if we're in a situation where he can play, a different style to Benteke, that's one thing. Because the other thing he hasn't shown is the ability to really be like an out and out winger, right? Like he hasn't shown that crossing ability. He can run, he can make those runs, but he's not finding Benteke's forehead the way that Jacob Merle did. So, there's a place for him if we have a false nine role in this team. We're not playing that way right now, and that makes it a very tough fit.
Nope. Brendan Cartwright, what new acquisitions exceeded your personal expectations with the caveat that it was one game or less, and who fell short? I don't think any of if we're talking brand new acquisitions, we talked about Borris Enow. I think he doesn't count, but I think he's one of the players we didn't really get to see a whole lot of last year. I think he got suspended a couple times. And maybe there were some concerns. He was in away for international break. So we never really got like more than like a couple games for him. So I'm going to count him. I think he exceeded expectations. Kojima, I think, was the other one. I don't want to say he exceeded expectations because we got plenty of alerts with him. I don't think he had like a standout game, but you could see some of those like abilities like on the dribble. He, I think, has a little bit more vision than a Pirani to sort of make that pass. I came away from him saying, this is a guy who's he's going to have moments where he's going to be good. It's not going to be every single game, but it's going to be more moments than not. And you can see what the team saw in him very early on. Other players, who fell short, Kim makes a mistake. It's going to happen. I'm not too worried about that. Schnegg was maybe a little bit disappointing, though they were trying to sort of play that left side, so he was pushed up a lot. Maybe wasn't put in the right positions. And then Kai Rawls, I don't know what expectations were with him. We got a question about, was he a little slow? Do we need to be worried about that? I think it's maybe just going to take some time for him to kind of adjust, and maybe he takes a couple steps back. And then the speed isn't the issue. There are plenty of slow defenders in this league. So,
I think positioning was more the issue there. We talked earlier on in the show about sort of really playing as a back three, and I think he was pushed up against a winger. He got beat for speed. That was tough. Another related question, and this comes from RJR and DC. kind of along those lines with Snag being passed up, with the new strategy Troy was trying, would it be better for Herrera to play up and Schnegg to stay back and the quasi back three went on offense?
I think we'll see. I think we'll see this. We're going to see this shift. And I think in the second half, they kind of shifted a little bit where Herrera was pushed up a little bit and Schnegg was maybe dropped back a little bit. So you're going to see, I think they're kind of going to look at moments and they're going to say, like, what side do we think is the most vulnerable? Is it going to be the left side or the right side? And then we're going to line up in a formation that's going to allow that winger to kind of be an extra midfielder / attacker and, go at them, so to speak. It didn't, I don't think it worked really fully. Their first goal came from breaking down the press. I don't think I ever really saw Schnegg really gain anything, advantage. It's just one of those things that just, it didn't work. And sometimes that happens. I think you'll see them try it again. They might do what you say. They might shift. They might say, look, we think the right side is going to be where we want to exploit them. I would like to see, and I think you'll see, I think right now Lessane's maybe trying to get them comfortable doing this. And then you're going to start to see them incorporate a little bit more when they work in training. Okay, now we're going to 15 minutes into a game, I might yell at you and point at you. And then that's your thing to say, you're going to drop back. He's going to push forward. And we're just going to switch and we're going to switch it. And it gets more. And honestly, then you hope it develops even more to where it's almost like a thing that just kind of happens naturally. Like the team players on the field can kind of sense it. And they say, and, Schnegg senses, I'm not getting much out of the left. I'm going to push back. And then Herrera's going to see that. He knows he can fly forward. And you're not going to have like a very structured organization. It's going to be much more free flowing. So it's just one of those things I think that's going to take time to develop. So, but I don't expect I don't expect that to be the permanent way they play. I expect them to shift it around a lot.
Yep. Let's see. Another question. Again from our JRNDC. If Stroud is healthy, does he play opposite Merle on the wings? And do we move Kajima into the middle of the formation, replacing Pirani?
Maybe. I think we're more likely to see like Leao possibly fill into that role. I think it's kind of open. Muriel came out and played great. He got the assist. He attacked that right side very well. I think it's still like the entire attack. I mean, they only generated, I think like it was like 0.8, 0.9 XG. That's not good enough for a team to win many soccer games.
0.74.
Yeah, it depends on where you look. It's like I've seen 0.8, I've seen 0.9. Under 1, like most cases.
Yep.
Obviously Toronto's at 1.9, but you always have to. That's always a grain of salt because they had the PK, and the PK just completely. I usually throw out XG if there's a PK because I'm more concerned about the open field. In that situation. So, I think both teams, I think a draw is probably fair based on the XG, the actual open field XG. I don't know. I think the only attacker right now I would say is a locked in penned starter at this point is Benteke. I think every other position there's competition. Even when Barajas comes in, he might step in and light it up. We might see Gavin Turner get a run out, maybe late game as a number 10. You never know. Like he can play that type of attacking midfielder. So there's opportunities for players for sure.
Yeah, I think had this been a game that we weren't chasing, I think I would have expected to see Gavin Turner on towards the end.
Yeah.
So
I think they were looking to push up. I think they substituted out a midfielder for a forward. I mean, they were just trying to bomb it forward. We got some next questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, here's another one. Looking forward to Chicago. With this starting 11, this is from Eric Eversman. With this starting 11, I feel we lose to Chicago on Saturday. But if Peltola and Peglo are back, maybe. What are the chances of getting either or both of them? Interested to know how the injury report might affect your predictions.
Yeah, we'll see. Peglo picked up a knock. it was maybe questionable to whether he would be in the lineup. He inevitably wasn't. He's maybe the one major signing we haven't really seen yet, so it's hard to really get a good read on how good he is. I will say it'll be tough for him. I don't know, like after those performances, your two sort of best wingers were Kojima and Muriel gets the assist. I expect both. I think both those players will start. I expect Pirani to be out there as well, just because I think they want to kind of see this thing out. But when Muriel has a game like that, I think you got to reward him and you got to say, "Yep, we're going to run you out again." Stroud then maybe comes in as kind of like a more mid-game, game-changing type substitution. So that's something to watch. Peltola, I think we'll still see Sarvini out there. I think they're going to want to be, it sounds like Peltola's injury was pretty significant. I think we'll see him maybe, if DC can get up early in a game, maybe you see him slot out there for like a 30-minute run out, get his fitness back in, kind of work him back into the team. Sarvinia was fine. He was nothing spectacular. He was nothing, nothing to write home about. I think I didn't walk out of that game thinking like, oh man, he's embarrassing. He should never play. He should never play for DC United. Like he was fine. He'll be serviceable. I think it allows you to get Peltola fully healthy, and then you can then build that sort of combination with Peltola and hopefully if we get two Gotherian players, it'll make the last offseason seem a lot better. Let's talk a little bit about Chicago. Obviously, Chicago are a team kind of rebuilding. Much like DC, they've got of course Greg Berhalter as their coach. And I don't know, have you seen on like Twitter that, and I'm gonna call it Twitter. I don't usually go there, but someone started like Chicago Fire Pyongyang, and they're using like AI generated photos of like as Greg Berhalter as like a North Korean general and like stuff like that, and like giving like propaganda-ish type stuff. They've also started one for DC United, like DC United Yugoslavia. But just some real weird, like American soccer's weird, folks, and this is like the tip of it. Go ahead.
Nope. No, I have not seen that, Tim.
Yes. Yeah, crazy stuff. But Chicago are a team that are struggling. I think I don't want to take them lightly. I think you can already see they went up against Columbus. They took a lead. The goals they gave up were just sloppy defensive miscues. They lost 4-2. But I don't think if you watch that full game, you left away, particularly in that first half, saying, wow, they look terrible. Like Chicago looked like they're running off the field. They were up 2-1. And then there was an own goal and then kind of a really bad defensive giveaway. And then they kind of fell apart. So I think they're still a team. I think it's going to be a case of, if you're Greg Berhalter, you're going to show them that sort of that first like 30 minutes and say, look, this is what you can do. This is how you can be better. You can go out and you can beat big teams like this. And, let's just wash away. We're not going to talk about the next few minutes. But I think if you're DC, you come out like you did and you punish them early. You can sort of get them to kind of revert back. I think they're kind of I think what I took away is they're kind of a fragile team where if things start to go wrong, they're still not quite there where they're going to be sort of mentally strong to kind of handle it. Overall, like, I think this is going to be, I think we all expect an improved Chicago team. Greg Berhalter, despite what the USMNT crowd, he's maybe not a great national team coach, but you give him time and he will put together a good team. Like he will certainly, those Columbus teams, he spent a lot of time working with them. He puts together good teams and he's going to put together a solid team at the very least. So certainly not somebody you want to take lightly. And Chicago are a franchise that wants to spend money. So I would say this is our best opportunity to beat them because they're still putting everything together.
But they're hit pretty good with injuries too. They've got like 6 out till end of March.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say this is about another 50-50 game, if I'm being honest. Maybe Chicago, the slight tilt because this is at home for them. But I think it's another 50-50 game. I think, you got to look at opportunities to pick up points. I think this is an opportunity to sneak away with a win. We see some improvements. We are a little bit tighter in the back. We don't have those sort of, mistakes, individual mistakes. And I think we could potentially walk away with the win. And that's kind of my main takeaway. The mistakes we gave up last year were just a team that was just getting overrun. Like they were just clearly like outmatched every single game. They had to play players in bad positions. So they were not comfortable in those positions. You looked at this team and you were like, okay, the structure here makes a little more sense. When they're under pressure, they have an ability to actually defend the lead. And John says, "Hello from the air, boys. We need an update, man. Are we signing Julian Gressel? Is he making his triumphant return?" But I think, going back to my point, I think you see a little bit more of an organizational team. I think the goals they gave up last game were individual type mistakes. And those are things you can correct. Ultimately, you can go in and you can correct those types of things. Systematically, I feel like there is some progress that's being made to where this team can defend. So we'll see.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add about this game? I don't think we have any more questions. I did not check our Discord, which usually I check first. I should maybe pause, but I didn't see anything, I don't think. And I might have forgotten to post something in the Discord too.
No, nothing else. Just looking forward to seeing what this team can do with a fully healthy complement if we ever get there. One game in, obviously not the result we wanted, but this is not a team that's going to light it up from end to end in the season. So we're going to be hoping for a whiff of a playoff spot come the fall, no matter no matter how we start the season. So hoping we can go to Chicago and get a decent result.
Yeah, and the other argument I'll make is, you're without last season. If we were out a starting central midfielder, starting left winger, we'll say, starting right winger, and out of those three players, that lineup is not one that could have competed in the game last year. They would have been struggling to find opportunities, and so I think it's a positive thing that they had players hurt like this. It's not an injury crisis, but it's certainly they have players out. They don't have an injury list that's like one or two. It's like 3, 4, 5 players, and then they still managed to have depth in there that came in. Maybe it wasn't Sarvania was serviceable. Mural had a good game. Kojima had a good game. Those are positive signs you want to see if you're a team that is like, we're not going to spend big, we're going to build solid. You want to see those types of solid contributions come to fruition, because it can ultimately mean you make the playoffs. And John, sorry, you missed your negativity. We had a really nice happy show. So happiness wins out. We'll have you on next week, buddy. Promise you. We'll let you get the full negativity that you want. All right, folks, that's going to do it. I don't think there was too much Spirit news, so we'll table that for next week. They're obviously going to start kicking off here soon. Go listen to some of our previous shows. We did a whole breakdown of the roster and everything like that. Anyway, we'll catch you guys next week. Vamos.
Vamos.